Imagine a creature, one that vanished, what, 13,000 years ago? A legendary beast, from fiction, suddenly walking among us again. Sounds like pure science fiction, doesn't it? Yet there's this company claiming they've actually done it. So today we're doing a deep dive into this really extraordinary and, pretty controversial world of de-extinction. We're focusing specifically on the purported return of the dire wolf.
It really is a field where science is pushing its absolute limits.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's sparking these huge ethical and ecological debates.
Exactly.
Our mission today really is to unpack these claims made by Colossal Biosciences, explore the cutting-edge science involved,
Right.
and then sort of confront the big questions as kind of power raises about our role, humanity's role in nature.
Yeah, and you're going to hear the steps they apparently took to bring these animals into existence. But just as importantly, we'll dig into the big questions critics are asking, like, is this genuine de-extinction? Or is it something else?
Something more nuanced, perhaps.
Yeah. And what are the real, long-term implications for the planet? Let's dive in. Okay, so before we get into the science of bringing them back, maybe let's just ground ourselves in what the direwolf actually was. It's not just a fantasy creature, right? This was a real, powerful, ancient predator.
Absolutely. The first fossils, they were found back in 1854 near the Ohio River, I believe.
Oh.
And then in 1858, this American scientist, Joseph Leidy, he formally classified it, Canis dirus.
Canis dirus, which means?
Frightful dog. And initially, he grouped it with modern dogs, wolves, jackals, the usual suspects.
Okay, frightful dog. But then our understanding shifted, didn't it, quite dramatically?
Oh, completely. I mean, for over a century, everyone basically assumed they were just, bigger, tougher cousins of gray wolves.
Right.
But then this huge study in 2021 published in Nature, it used ancient DNA analysis and just dropped a bombshell, really.
A bombshell how?
It revealed dire wolves are actually genetically distinct. Very distinct. They branched off from the lineage that led to modern wolves and coyotes something like 5.7 million years ago.
Wow. 5.7 million years.
Oh.
So even though they lived alongside gray wolves in North America?
For thousands of years, yeah. The study found zero evidence of interbreeding. None at all.
So that just completely upended the conventional wisdom.
Totally. They were their own unique evolutionary path.
So what did this distinct creature actually look like and behave like? I mean, were they the size of the ones in Game of Thrones?
Yeah, well, maybe not quite that exaggerated. Pop culture tends to run with things, but they were big. About 25% larger than modern gray wolves.
Still pretty formidable.
Oh, yeah. Their skulls were noticeably longer, wider, housed these incredibly powerful jaw muscles, and appearance-wise, descriptions suggest they had light, almost white fur.
And socially, like modern wolves.
Seems so. Like modern wolves, they were social hunters, lived in packs, coordinated their hunts.
Which leads to the big mystery. Why did they disappear around 13,000 years ago when gray wolves managed to survive?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? There are two main theories kicking around.
Right.
One suggests they were highly specialized hunters. They focused on large prey animals, the megafauna.
Like giant sloths, mastodons.
Exactly. And those large prey animals were also going extinct around that time at the end of the Pleistocene. So their food source vanished.
Makes sense. And the second theory?
The second theory focuses on genetics and adaptability. Unlike the gray wolves, which could interbreed with other canids and were perhaps more flexible, the dire wolves couldn't or didn't.
No.
So maybe they just lacked the genetic flexibility to adapt to the rapid environmental changes happening then. They were kind of stuck in their niche.
Interesting. So this powerful, specialized, but ultimately doomed creature, it found this second life in our imagination.
Absolutely. Game of Thrones obviously was huge, but also World of Warcraft, Dungeons and Dragons. The dire wolf became this iconic fantasy beast.
And that popularity, that cultural recognition, that actually played a role in Colossal Biosciences choosing it.
It seems so, yeah. It's a fascinating intersection of science and, well, public appeal. It kind of primed the pump for its return, you could say.
So, okay, bringing back something like the direwolf, what does de-extinction actually mean in scientific terms? What are the ways you could even attempt something like this?
Right, so de-extinction at its core is basically trying to resurrect an extinct species, bring it back to life. And historically and now, there are sort of three main approaches people talk about.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first is called backbreeding. Now, this isn't true de-extinction genetically speaking. It's more like focused selective breeding.
How does that work?
You find living relatives that still have some traits of the extinct animal, maybe stripes or a particular coat color or horn shape. And then over generations, you selectively breed individuals that show those traits most strongly. You're trying to concentrate those characteristics.
Okay, selective breeding to make something look like the extinct animal. Is there an example of this?
Yeah, a really famous one is the quagga project in South Africa.
Yeah.
The quagga was this amazing animal, looked like a zebra at the front, kind of like a horse at the back,
Wow.
hunted to extinction by 1883. So this project started way back in 1987. They started breeding zebras that naturally had fewer stripes, especially on their back ends.
And did it work?
Remarkably well, visually speaking. After about 20 years, 3 generations of careful breeding, by 2022 they had animals that looked incredibly similar to the paintings and preserved skins of the original quagga.
That's amazing. But like you said, it's visually similar.
Exactly. That's the key limitation. It primarily recreates the appearance. It doesn't necessarily bring back the full genetic code or hidden traits, behaviors, disease resistance, that kind of thing. It looks like a quagga, but genetically it's still a selectively bred plains zebra.
Okay, so backbreeding gives you the look, but not the full genetic reality. So the next step would be cloning,
Yeah.
like Dolly the sheep.
Right. Cloning is the second method, creating a genetically identical copy. Dolly in 1996 was obviously a huge breakthrough for mammals.
How does that apply to extinct species, though?
Well, the massive challenge is you need a perfectly preserved, intact cell nucleus from the extinct species, which is, incredibly rare for anything long extinct.
Right.
If you had one, you'd transfer that nucleus into an egg cell from a closely related living species after removing its own nucleus. Then implant that egg.
Has this ever been successfully tried for de-extinction?
There was one famous and ultimately quite tragic attempt with the bucardo or Pyrenean ibex, a type of Spanish wild goat.
Okay.
The very last one, a female named Celia, died on January 6th, 2000. A tree fell on her, sadly, but scientists had taken skin samples a year before she died.
So they had cells.
They had cells. They took nuclei from those cells, put them into 57 goat eggs. Only 7 resulted in pregnancies. 6 of those miscarried.
Oh, wow.
One live bucardo clone was actually born, but it only lived for about 10 minutes and had severe lung defects. Yeah, so it became known as the animal that went extinct twice. It just brutally highlights how difficult cloning is for de-extinction. The success rate is incredibly low, even with relatively fresh cells. Imagine trying with ancient mammoth cells.
It's extinct twice is rough. It really puts a damper on the cloning dream for older extinctions.
Yeah.
So if cloning is that hard, what's the third way? The one that's supposedly more promising now.
That brings us to genetic engineering. This is really the cutting edge. It starts with DNA extracted from ancient fossils.
Which is usually degraded, right?
Wow.
Fragmented.
Exactly. It's almost never a complete blueprint. It's like finding tiny scraps of paper from a shredded book. Scientists take these fragments and compare them to the complete genome of the closest living relative.
Right.
Then, using gene editing tools, the most famous being CRISPR-Cas9, they precisely modify the living relative's DNA in specific spots to match the extinct species' DNA sequences found in those fragments.
So you're editing the living relative's DNA to be more like the extinct ones.
Precisely. You edit the cells, maybe skin cells, in a lab dish. Then you take the nucleus from one of those edited cells and put it into an egg cell from the living relative, similar to the cloning process, to try and create an embryo.
And CRISPR, that's the genetic scissors technology that won the Nobel Prize, right? For Charpentier and Doudna.
That's the one. Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2020. It allows for incredibly precise edits to the DNA code. It's revolutionary.
But it still sounds incredibly challenging, especially with ancient DNA.
Oh, the hurdles are immense. First, getting enough good quality, undamaged DNA from fossils that might be thousands or tens of thousands of years old. It's really, really tough. Degradation, contamination. It's a nightmare.
Like finding needles in a haystack?
Kinda, yeah. And then, even with CRISPR, making potentially millions of precise changes throughout the genome to truly replicate an extinct species, that's a monumental task. We're not just talking about changing a few letters here and there.
It's rewriting huge chunks of the genetic book.
Exactly. It's incredibly complex.
Which brings us neatly to Colossal Biosciences. This company, co-founded in 2021 by Ben Lamb, a tech billionaire, and George Church, a really famous geneticist from Harvard.
Right. They've definitely positioned themselves at the forefront of this de-extinction push. Their big flagship project is the Woolly Mammoth.
But they're also aiming for the Tasmanian Tiger, the Dodo. Quite a portfolio.
An ambitious one, certainly.
So with mammoths and thylacines on the list, why announce the dire wolf first?
Well, it seems like a strategic and maybe pragmatic decision. Think about the challenges with the others. For the mammoth, you need a surrogate mother. The closest relative is the Asian elephant, which has a 22-month gestation period that's incredibly long and complex.
Okay.
For the Tasmanian tiger or thylacine, it was a marsupial. So you'd likely need some kind of advanced artificial pouch or womb technology, which is still highly experimental.
Right. And the dodo.
Birds are tricky. Manipulating bird eggs for cloning or genetic engineering is notoriously difficult compared to mammals.
So the dire wolf, it presented fewer immediate logistical nightmares.
It seems that way. Plus, as we discussed, it has that huge pop culture recognition thanks to Game of Thrones. So, in a key meeting in 2023, the dire wolf likely emerged as the best candidate to sort of test their whole process and generate significant buzz.
Get a win on the board, maybe? Generate publicity?
Precisely. And publicity they certainly got.
Okay, so let's walk through the steps Colossal claims they took for this dire wolf de-extinction. What came first?
First step was DNA acquisition. Summer of 2023. Their team apparently found two really promising fossil samples, a 13,000-year-old tooth from Sheridan Cave in Ohio, and a much older 70,000-year-old skull from the American Falls Reserve in Idaho. They claim they got 500 times more genetic data than previous attempts on dire wolf DNA.
500 times more. Do we know what percentage of the full genome they recovered?
They haven't publicly released that specific number, which is, a point some critics have raised, but they claimed it was a significant improvement.
Okay, so they have the ancient DNA fragments.
Yeah.
Next.
Comparison to closest relative. They confirmed the gray wolf is the closest living relative, sharing about 99.5% of its DNA.
Which helps figure out what the dire wolf genes actually did, right?
Exactly. It makes inferring gene function much easier. Then came gene selection. This is crucial. They didn't try to change everything. They identified 14 specific genes in the gray wolf genome to target.
Just 14 genes? Out of how many?
Millions. But these 14 were chosen because they believed they controlled key external direwolf traits, things like larger size, the distinct head shape, maybe fur color, and fluffiness.
So focusing on the visible differences.
Primarily, yes. Then, gene editing. Using CRISPR-Cas9, they reportedly made 20 specific changes within those 14 targeted genes in gray wolf cells. They grew thousands of these edited cells in the lab.
20 changes across 14 genes.
Yeah, okay.
What happened to those cells?
Mid-2024, embryo transfer. They took the nuclei from those edited gray wolf cells and inserted them into egg cells from domestic dogs. They used dogs as surrogates after removing the dog's original nuclei. They created 45 embryos this way and implanted them into two surrogate mother dogs.
45 embryos. Did many take?
Apparently not. Only 2 embryos developed successfully, which led to the birth stage. On October 1st, 2024, those 2 embryos resulted in the birth of 2 male pups.
Romulus and Remus?
Romulus and Remus, exactly. Delivered via C-section. They were worried about the potential size difference for a natural birth.
Makes sense. And they were bottle-fed eventually.
Initially fed by the surrogate mother, then transitioned to bottle feeding, yes. And then later, on January 30th, 2025, a third pup, a female this time, was born, named Khaleesi.
Khaleesi, okay.
Yeah.
Keeping the theme going.
Right. And what's really interesting, even with Romulus and Remus being essentially clones, having identical edited DNA.
They behave differently.
Immediately. Reports said Remus was bolder, more exploratory, while Romulus was shyer, more cautious.
That's fascinating. So even with the same genes.
It just highlights that DNA isn't destiny, right?
Yeah.
An organism is shaped by so much more. The environment in the womb, the upbringing, even the surrogate mother's influence diet, stress levels, even the gut microbes. It all plays a role in development and personality. DNA is the blueprint, but not the whole building.
That biological nuance, that's really important. And it leads us straight into the heart of the big debate here. What does de-extinction actually mean in the real world?
Exactly. And this is where Colossal faces a lot of questions, a lot of criticism. Ben Lamb, the co-founder, has stated their current plan is to create maybe only 3 to 5 dire wolves in total.
Just 3 to 5. And where would they live?
Apparently, in a very highly controlled, secure facility. We're talking 10-foot fences, drone surveillance, and access primarily limited to, well, occasional visiting billionaires is what was mentioned.
Okay, so not exactly rewilding them into Yellowstone. This sounds more like a showpiece.
That's precisely the core of the criticism, is this showpiece versus genuine ecological restoration. For many scientists and conservationists, true de-extinction means bringing a species back to fulfill its ecological role on Earth.
Not just to be, looked at in a high-security enclosure.
Right. Creating a few animals for a controlled, almost private zoo, does that really count as bringing a species back from extinction?
And what about the lives of those animals, these young dire wolves, Romulus, Remus, Khaleesi? They won't learn to hunt naturally. They won't live in a pack in the wild.
Their lives will be completely managed, which raises that difficult question. Are they truly thriving as a species, or is this maybe, like the bucardo, a different kind of extinction? Extinction from their wild nature.
Going extinct a second time, in a way.
In terms of their wildness, potentially, yes.
And then there's the really fundamental question. Is it actually a dire wolf?
That's the big scientific critique. If you only altered 14 genes, making 20 specific changes, considering they share 99.5% of their DNA with gray wolves anyway.
That's a tiny fraction of the genome you've actually changed.
Yeah.
Less than 0.00001%, doing the math.
Exactly. So is it truly a dire wolf? Or is it a gray wolf that's been genetically engineered to look more like our image of a dire wolf?
Well, the analogy that comes up is humans and chimpanzees. We share, what, 98.8% of our DNA?
Around that, yeah.
So if scientists made, say, 14 targeted gene changes to a chimp to make it look a bit more human-like,
Yeah.
would anyone actually call it human?
It's a provocative analogy, but it makes the point, doesn't it? It highlights the massive gap between changing a few superficial traits and recreating the entire genetic and biological essence of a distinct species.
Yeah, it really does. And beyond just what the animal is, there are the ecological implications. Huge ones.
Absolutely. Remember, the dire wolf went extinct naturally. As far as we know, humans didn't hunt them into oblivion. Their world changed. Their prey disappeared.
So is there even a place, an ecological niche for them in today's world? Which is vastly different from the world of 13,000 years ago.
That's a critical question. The large animals they specialized in hunting are gone. If you release these engineered dire wolves today, what would they eat?
They'd presumably compete with gray wolves, cougars, bears, for deer, elk, the prey that exists now.
Exactly. Which could put them right back under the same extinction pressures they faced originally. Competing for limited resources, potentially disrupting the existing ecological balance we have now.
So the fear is you bring them back, release them, and they just go extinct again or cause other problems.
It's a definite risk. The potential for unintended consequences in complex ecosystems is huge. It could just lead to re-extinction.
This whole discussion makes me think about the bigger picture, this idea of prevention versus cure. A lot of scientists, a lot of conservation groups, they argue that the incredible technology, the resources, the millions of dollars being poured into de-extinction, maybe that should be going elsewhere.
It's a very powerful counterargument that maybe those resources would be far better spent on conserving the species we still have, the ones currently endangered, the ones that actually have a functioning role in today's ecosystems.
Like, think about the northern white rhinos.
Oh, that's just heartbreaking. In the 1970s, there were over 500. Today, just 2 left. 2 females, Najin and Fatu, both elderly.
And scientists are desperately trying to use advanced reproductive tech, IVF, and surrogates just to save the species from vanishing forever.
Driven to the absolute brink by human poaching and habitat loss, once those 2 females pass away naturally, that's it. Gone forever.
And that's just one species. Wasn't there a UN report?
Yeah, a sobering one in May 2019. It warned that over 1 million plant and animal species are currently threatened with extinction, facing a mass extinction event largely driven by human activities.
1 million species. It really puts this focus on bringing back 1 or 2 extinct ones into perspective, doesn't it?
It really does. It brings up that old saying, right? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yeah. Protecting what we have now, the species, the habitats, maybe that's the wiser investment. Preventing the need for these incredibly complex, ethically tangled de-extinction projects down the road.
Many would argue strongly for that, focusing on safeguarding the existing natural world rather than trying to recreate potentially problematic pieces of the past.
So this deep dive, it's shown us these incredible leaps in genetic engineering, hasn't it? The possibility of bringing back lost species. It's tantalizing.
It is technologically fascinating, but it also throws these profound questions right back at us. What does it really mean to bring a species back, especially if it's maybe just back as a kind of scientific curiosity?
Yeah. And what are our responsibilities when we gain this kind of power? The power to edit life, to potentially reverse extinction.
Huge responsibilities.
So as you, our listeners, think about this story, the dire wolf's supposed return, maybe mull this over. Do we have a greater responsibility to try and, I don't know, undo the extinctions of the past? Or is our primary duty right now to safeguard the present, to build a sustainable future for the million species still struggling to survive on Earth today?